everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I wanted to share some books that I finished recently because I've really been enjoying my reading. I know I haven't spoken about it on here in a really long time, and I was actually thinking of doing what I've read in the past however many months all the way back through the summer, but I just decided to skip it this year and just close the year out with my best books of the year, maybe do like a rapid fire everything I've read, because I really haven't talked about most of the books I've read, but that's for another day. I just kind of closed out listening to and reading some books that I've really enjoyed. I've been obsessed with Libby recently. I've been listening to so many audiobooks for like comfort. Like I just finished listening to Little Women, which I typically read around like November, December, January every single year. I usually read it physically, but I have a lot of books I want to get through, so I decided to listen to it this year. But I also listened to two other books. First, Sula by Toni Morrison, and then Adam Bede by George Eliot. I did buy these physically. I ordered them from Thrift Books, I believe, because I wanted to have them on my shelves, but I did listen to these. First, I haven't read a Toni Morrison in a long time, I think a couple years, unless I'm forgetting something, and I don't think I've ever listened to one of her books, and she actually narrated it, and it was wonderful. I loved listening to her read this book. It's a really beautiful and haunting story about kind of two families, and kind of culminating in the friendship of these two young girls, Sula and Nell. And it's about their stories, about their growing up, but also about their mothers and their grandmothers growing up in a place called The Bottom. And I'll talk about it more probably in one of my best books of the year wrap up, but I really, really enjoyed listening to this. And then I listened to Adam Bede by George Eliot, and this doesn't look that long in this edition, but I don't even remember how many hours this audiobook was, but it took me a very, very long time to listen to. I actually listened to this because it was my book club pick, and there were two sessions, the first half of the book and then the second half of the book, and I wasn't able to attend either of the two sessions, which is really frustrating because I spent so much time listening to this book and I really was not enjoying it for the first couple hours, and then it kind of picked up a little bit, but I was pissed that I couldn't go to either of the two meetings. The first, I had like a wedding dress appointment, which was obviously fun. And then the second, I just had work and I wasn't able to like get there in time. But this was a very interesting read. Listen, I had never heard of this book before. I wasn't at all ready for what this book was going to be about, but there are some really big plot twists and like shocking and narrative elements in this book. There are also there's a lot of moralizing in this book, which I just mentioned Little Women, like that's one of my favorite books of all time, but this was even more annoying, I think. There's just this character, Dinah, who is a great comfort to many of the struggling characters in this book, so that was really her role in this book, but like listening to some of her moralizing was a little bit frustrating. I think it was probably the audiobook, but this shocked me in lots of ways, especially based on when it was written. So yeah. And then my kind of pinnacle of books this year, I finally finished Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the new book that just came out in October. This is the fourth installment of the Southern Reach trilogy, which is my favorite series of all time. I just reread it in October in anticipation of this book coming out. It's a little bit of a prequel, a little bit of a sequel. It's a lot of things, but it's comprised of three stories. Comprised of three different stories. The first being 20 years before the border comes down, creating Area X, and a team of frenzied and stupefied biologists go into the Forgotten Coast, which is on Florida, and they're not really sure who is pulling the strings and what's happening there, and it becomes a cluster, and it's quite intense. And then the second story is about old Jim, who is kind of like a tangential, I don't know if I'm saying that word correctly, a minor character in the first three books, but we find out a lot more about his backstory, who he actually is, why he was on the Forgotten Coast, and it's right before the border comes down. The third story is Lowry's perspective, who is a big antagonistic, despicable character in the first 3 books, and we are actually in his POV. We are very close to Lowry, which is a bit uncomfortable, but all to great effect, and we're actually traveling with him on the first expedition into Area X, and he eventually becomes the director of the Southern Reach, the government agency who's charged with protecting, studying, manipulating, and trying to categorize Area X. So he has like this really long career and narrative, but we are kind of introduced to his origin story with Area X in this book. Overall, I absolutely loved reading this. Each story really was like a worthy addition to the world. It added a lot of like roots to the story, especially Old Jim's story. I really, really loved that. I'm so glad that I reread the other 3 books recently, because I don't think I even would have remembered who Old Jim was. Maybe I would have remembered the name, but not some of like the catalyst, how he was and acted as the catalyst for Saul Evans' story. So it really deepened a lot of characters. There were a lot of really moving moments, a lot of really horrifying moments. It deepened the questions about language and about technology, and there were some really horrifying moments, like these really cool ideas. We know in the other 3 books that Area X is warps human technology, advanced technology. So and I never really understood like what that meant, other than the fact that it didn't function or it played tricks on the expedition members. But in this book, we see technology having kind of animalistic qualities to it, and how it had a life of its own. And I just loved this so much. Again, I will talk about this in my best books of the year, but this was wonderful, and I'm so glad it stood up to what I imagined, or what I hoped for. It's not at all what I imagined. I didn't really know what to expect or imagine, but I'm so glad that I loved it so much. So that's kind of what I've read recently. I am in the middle of 2 books now that I will talk about later, but I'm just trying to narrow down the other books that I really, really want to get to in the end of November and through December, because I have been quite a slow reader recently for a million and one reasons, but I've definitely not read as much as I have liked to. I've been distracted, I've been busy, I haven't had the, I just haven't like dedicated time to it, but the things that I have read I've mostly enjoyed, but I'm just trying to narrow down like the last couple books that I want to squeeze in through the rest of this year. So we will talk about that at some point. I'm about to head to book club. I finally can attend a meeting, and this week's book, and I hope we only have to read half of it for this week and that we have another session on this book. I don't actually know the breakdown, but the current book is Barnaby Rudge by Charles Dickens. My edition literally just came in the mail today, so I have been listening to it on Libby, or actually on Audible, I think. And I think it's only halfway that we have to have read by today's session, which is good because I think I'm on, I have to check, but I think I'm on almost chapter 40, which should be about halfway, at least in my edition. I went from reading no Dickens for my entire life to this year reading 3 of his books. I read Our Mutual Friend, which I physically read and adored it. Loved it so, so much. And then I listened to, oh my god, what is it called? His most famous book? What is it called? I'm going crazy. Oh. And then I listened to A Tale of Two Cities and was entertained by it and appreciated a lot of it, but I felt like the characters that we spent the most time with were a bit of a wet blanket, and I wanted to spend more time with some other characters. And yeah, we had like really great conversation about it in my book club, but alas, I didn't love it as much as I loved Our Mutual Friend. And now Barnaby Rudge, again, I'm only halfway through, but I am a little bit bored of this book. I feel like the tension will pick up because it's a book in 2 parts, and we like skip 5 years, and then I think the second half of the book will focus more on the riots of the 1780s, which I don't know really anything about historically, but I think it will pick up a bit in the second half. The first half is a lot of manipulating and a lot of kind of interconnected familial drama, I would say, which like usually is my cup of tea, but I just am not enjoying it that much. It could be that I'm listening to it and maybe I would enjoy it more if I was physically reading it, and maybe Dickens is just an author that I should read physically, but they're just quite long. So for now I'm listening to it and we'll see. I'm looking forward to our meeting today. And then the book that I'm physically reading, which I am loving, and I'm like 5 pages through. No, I'm 34 pages through, but it's similar to when I started The Shadow of the Wind and I read the first 8 pages and just knew in my heart of hearts that that book was for me, that I was going to adore it, and I did. It's a standout book for me. And this book, Little Big by John Crowley, I have the same spidey sense that this is going to be a book that I love. I am so excited to keep reading this. Like, I want to keep taking breaks from listening to frickin' Barnaby Rudge to read this, but, you know, time is not really letting that happen right now. But this is spectacular. It is a historical fantasy, I would say, and right now we are following our main character, Smokey Barnacle, which is a fantastic name, as he is following his fated love and going to her home on like this great physical excursion to go and be in her home with her family. And everything about the home is kind of mysterious. It's called Edgewood and it doesn't exist on a map. And we are right now experiencing Edgewood with Smokey, and it is just magical and fantastic, and I'm already just loving like the rhythm and the pacing and the writing of it. It's just my cup of tea. Like, everything about this book so far is perfect, and I can't wait to keep reading it. So these are kind of the 2 books that I have going right now. I had started Moon Witch Spider King, and I'm going to return to that when I finish these 2, but I just am kind of like frantically reading right now because there's so much that I want to read in the next few weeks that I'm almost like piecemealing my reading in a way that is like very anti-me. I'm usually like a 1 book at a time type of girl, maybe like an audiobook and a physical book, but right now I feel like I'm just trying anything to see what I'm most excited about and then diving into that. So as soon as I picked up Little Big, I was like, okay, this is the only book I want to read physically. I'm absolutely loving this. I don't want to split my time with anything else. That's everything I'm reading right now. I'm going to bundle up and head over to book club. It's about 30 minutes away, so I should get going, but yeah, we'll see. Those blew up, so. Hello everyone. It's about 6 p.m. on a Saturday, but it feels to be about 10 p.m. and I'm getting ready to just tuck in for the night and read. I wanted to share my TBR for the remainder of the year. I'm not usually a monthly TBR type of person. I kind of am more like spur of the moment when I'm interested in reading, and also I worry that if I started doing monthly TBRs and then like didn't read the majority of the books I set out for myself, I would get a little bit discouraged and bummed out. But now that we're approaching the last few weeks of the year, I think it would help me stay more focused. Riley's doing his activity that he does every night. Okay, first I want to finish Barnaby Rudge. We did have, Riley, can you please hold? Oh, look at him, belly. So, firstly, I want to finish Barnaby Rudge. It was good news. We only had to have read the first half of the book for book club the other night, which is good, and we have until the second week of January to read the book in its entirety. But I am definitely going to finish it this year because I want it to count for my books for 2024, and also I'm like in a nice routine of listening to this audiobook. And we spent most of the meeting the other night talking about like the historical context for this book. So talking about the Gordon riots and talking about some of the influential figures of the time, and it was interesting. So I'm excited to see where this book goes and just continue listening to it, and then continue to read Little Big, which I'm really loving. I'm 62 pages in now and still really enjoying it. And then the 4 other books I want to try to squeeze in at the end of the year, and I think it's maybe possible because that week in between Christmas and New Year's I essentially moved back in with my parents and all I do is sit on the couch and read. So it's possible, but I would like to finish Moonwitch Spider King. I'm not sure how many pages I'm in because I've started and stopped this book many a time, but I am determined to finally finish this book. It's very long, so we'll see. I'm just very excited to finally give some time to this book. And then the 3 other books I'm hoping to read this year, you won't be surprised to see Ship of Destiny. This is the last book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy that I have read earlier this year. I think I read the second book now in like July, so it's been a while since I've entered this world, and I am so excited. This is probably the book that I'm most excited to read in general. I absolutely love Robin Hobb, The Realm of the Elderlings, and I can't wait to see where some of our core characters and this specific story, their stories are continued in other trilogies and other series in this world. But I'm just so excited. This has been a highlight of my reading year. And then I would really like to read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This was all the rage last year, and I kind of picked it for my December TBR because something that I haven't read a lot of this year is just like contemporary novels, literary fiction novels. I haven't read too many of those this year, and everyone said that this was like such a beautiful book, and I think it was in a lot of people's best books of 2023. So excited to read this. And then if I can squeeze it in, I would love to read Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I ordered this off Thrift Books maybe a couple weeks or months ago, and this is just kind of a classic that I would love to get to, and everyone says it's really beautiful, so we'll see. But those are the books. I'm not going to kind of venture outside of this little list that I pulled for myself just so that I stay focused, but I am really excited to finish out my reading on a high note, hopefully. We'll see where I kind of get. I think I will be under my goal for the year. I think I had my reading goal but actually maybe I'll get to it. I had my reading goal at 40. I'm now going to go read on the couch and bask in the light of the Christmas tree. I did buy additional ornaments today. I've been on a kick. That's like what I've been spending the most amount of money on in the past few weeks, is really just Christmas tree ornaments. And to be fair, I didn't really have enough. We purchased like an actual Christmas tree this year because our previous apartment just like didn't have room for any additional things to be added to the space. But you know, now we have the room for a really nice Christmas tree, so we bought an artificial one, which usually I am pro real tree, but just the mess of it and knowing that we're kind of going back to visit our families in like the second half of the month, we just thought it would be better to get a fake one. And I have been on a kick of buying like woolen ornaments, mostly like woodland creatures. but also a bunch of other things. And I found 2 additional ones today, and now I'm done. I really need to stop, but they've really like been making my heart happy, and I love the trade. I'm gonna end this one here. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye everyone.